Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem, Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Revelation chapter 12. And pretty much something in one of his lessons about going back to the breakdowns. So you have BTTB, back to the basics, and also BTTB, back to the breakdowns. Anyways, we're going to get into it. Lord's will, it'll be an edifying lesson. Revelation chapter 12 is pretty much straightforward. There's not a whole lot of twists and turns. I mean, there are pockets of future events that took place, but for the most part, it happened during the time of Yahushai and 70 AD. But some of it happens at the very end, dealing with today. All right, so let's get into it. Brothers that have been studying, they already know the breakdown to this. This is more so for the younger members, brothers that are just waking up. A few sisters that are waking up, but mainly we focus more on the men because the men are the teachers, prophets, that are going to be out there teaching the word in season and out of season. Not talking about it's teaching season again. Like some of these other camps, when it's too cold or too hot, they don't come out. They got to come out when it's just right. So let's get into it. See here, check this out. This is heavy because there's the woman Israel. That's heavy because that's exactly what it represents. Now, when you go to the Roman Catholic Church, and you can't say that that I'm lying because I've heard them say it. I've witnessed them say it. I've had conversations on the comment board, back and forth, where with Abu and others that try to say that this woman here in Revelation 12:1 is talking about Mary. It's not talking about Mary. It's talking about the nation of Israel because they worship Mary as the Queen of Heaven. That's why when that double Abu came down to 34th and 7th, at one time he came with the so-called Virgin Mary on his T-shirt, Vieja Guadalupe, and trying to act like he didn't know, the scriptures. He was being a snake, and they say, yeah, I think it's written in the book of Revelation, No, it wasn't. No, it ain't. That's the bullshit that was brought up by the Roman Catholic Church to push and continue to push that, woman worship, the Queen of Heaven worship. Nevertheless, Revelation 12:1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. The sun represents wisdom. The moon represents understanding. Wisdom maketh a man's face to shine. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars, and this crown of 12 stars is what proves that it's talking about the 12 tribes of Israel. When you go to the book of Genesis, I believe it's roughly around the 43rd chapter or so. You can start at 41 to be, more sure. It speaks about Joseph having a dream where the sun and the moon were bound to him, and the 11 stars were bound to him, which the 11 stars represented his brothers, because the nation of Israel is broken up into 12 tribes. All right, so that's what the crown of 12 stars is all about. Not no goddamn woman worship, Queen of Heaven worship. And she being with child, travailing in birth, pain to be delivered, meaning the nation of Israel at the time when Yahushua came on the scene, prior to it, they were catching hell under the Romans. And they had just finished catching hell under the Greeks. Now they were catching hell under the Romans. And they were looking to be delivered. Let's go real quick to the book of Matthew, chapter 11, and verse 11. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there have not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Here it is, the Lord has given John the Baptist props, man, great high honor. And these guys talking about John the Baptist fell out the truth, talking about ISUPK. Bugged out. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he, right? Because as great as John the Baptist was, the kingdom of heaven is going to be on a total different level, because we're all going to be changed. So the least man in the kingdom is going to be perfect. You see, that's what it means, that the least, and really he's talking about the disciples, because the disciples were esteemed least, among, Israel back then. They were esteemed to be the least. So they're going to be greater because they're going to be in higher positions, but the nation of Israel, the men and the women, are going to be in perfect order in the kingdom of heaven. All right. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence. So who is the kingdom of heaven? The Israelites. They were suffering violence under who? Under the Romans. And the violent take it by force. And they did take it by force. And this is why you had those revolts, because of the taxation that was going on. And remember, the denarius kept being devalued, so they had to keep collecting taxes, more and more taxes. And that caused more and more revolts, till eventually, 70 AD came to pass. So let's go back. The red dragon, Satan, which this red dragon, Satan, is a group, or for lack of better words, a conglomeration or a gathering of Edomite nations. All right. And that's why they're identified as being red, because the Edomites are red. All right. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. So the Apostle John saw an actual beast in the heavens, but this beast in the heavens represented a particular nation of people and their empires. When we go to Revelation 17, it explains what that great dragon is. Revelation 17 and 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, which the mountains are a representation of governments. Heads are a representation of rulership. So the 7 heads, or the 7 rulerships, are 7 mountains, or 7 governments on which the woman sitteth. The woman, which is the harlot, being America, sits upon those 7 empires, which are Edomite empires, because America comes out of all 7 of those so-called European nations. Now the 7 heads are the Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, Germania Major, Germania Minor, and Britain. Those are the 7. All right, it says, and there are 7 kings, which shows you that this 7 heads and 10 horns is not talking about an actual beast, or it's not talking about the spiritual demon Satan, although the spiritual demon Satan is giving them power from the power that the Most High gave Satan. But it's not talking about no actual beast, and it's not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. It's talking about a conglomeration or empires coming together collectively of Esau. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, because when John had this vision, the Apostle John, the Roman Empire was in power, and they had conquered, those old empires, under their ancient names. And the 5 that were fallen were the Greeks, because the Greeks were absorbed into the Roman Empire roughly around 25 BC. That's when the last pharaoh of the Edomite kingdom was on the throne in Egypt, which was Ptolemy the 13th and his sister Cleopatra the 7th. Those are the last 2 Ptolemaic rulers, and they were absorbed into the Roman Empire, 25 AD. So you had the Greeks, you had the Spanish, you had the French, Germania Major and Germania Minor. These were in subjection under the ancient Roman Empire, and it's talking about, we're talking about the known world at the time, because you still had barbarians that were considered part of the Germanic tribes, but they were not in the Roman Empire. They were, spread out. So the known world, when you go on a map, right? Let me just type in Roman Empire. And shalom to all the beloved out there, and shalom to you, my brother Bansapat. Here you have, what's this here? You have the Roman Empire. This was 117 AD. This is the height, the greatest extent, meaning the most they ruled. But even going before this, prior to this, because the Apostle John had wrote those visions roughly around 96 AD, so it wasn't too far from this. This is what they had. So you have here Britannica, you know, which were also known as Anglo-Saxons. You had the Spanish and the Portuguese, which is one. You know, this was the Visigoths. You had the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, you know, so on and so forth. These are the 10. All right, so this area around the Mediterranean Sea was conquered by the ancient Roman Empire. All right. So anything above here, this was just nomad's land. So anything in here, as you can see, you got Italy, you have Spain over here, France in this area, then you have Greece, you know, Turkey, so on and so forth. So all of these were under the rule of Esau. So the Greeks, the French, the Spanish, Germania Major and Germania Minor, they were under the grip of the ancient Roman Empire. All right. And one is, so the one that is, the five that fell, we just mentioned, the one that is was the Roman Empire, which this is the sixth head. So at this point, the Roman Empire was still in power, but this was the last year of the Edomite rule of the ancient Roman Empire. All right. Because Jake took over, but they just ran it the same way the ancient Romans did. That's why it was still called pagan Rome until in roughly 325 AD, Constantine and then another bishop made, I forget the name of the other guy, made Christianity the religion of the ancient Roman Empire, but they were still pagan. All right, so it went from being called the pagan Roman Empire to being the Holy Roman Empire. It says, and the other is not yet come. So this would be the seventh one, which would be Britain. All right, because the British Empire wasn't an empire as of yet, you know, and the land mass of Britain was being conquered by the Romans. That's why you see this in red. It was conquered by the Romans. So they weren't in power yet. You know, you had wars and different things that took place, but they were not set up as a superpower until later on in the history, right? And it says, and when he cometh, meaning this individual, he must continue a short space. Yeah, because when the British Empire was established, they had a short run as far as holding on to the world reserve currency. Because prior to the British pound being the world reserve currency, you had the Dutch guilder, I believe it was called. They were pretty much the ones in power, you know, in that fashion until the British took them over and the British pound became the world reserve currency. And then in 1945, 45, that's when the American dollar took the world reserve currency place. All right, and that began a new world order. Every time there's an economic shift, that begins a new world order. So from that point until now, the American dollar has been the one to rule on the planet. All right. So the seventh came, and he must continue a short space. Yeah, because they weren't able to maintain that status because America will have to come in to take over because it's prophecy. And the beast that was, meaning when you go up above here, this in the 8th verse, this beast here is speaking about America. It says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, right? So this is the 8th head. America would be the 8th head. And the reason why it says the beast that was and is not, because it was in the vision of John, he saw America, but it wasn't time for America to rule yet. So that's the 8th head. And is of the 7 because it comes out of all 7 of these empires and goeth into perdition, meaning it goes into destruction. All right. And that's the reason why America was set up and established. And that's through America. Notice that through America, the whole world is becoming more and more corrupt as each day goes on. You know, because when they first started, allegedly, they were set up under so-called Christian principles, right? The Judeo-Christian doctrine, right? But it was started under under the Freemasons. It was started under witchcraft. You know, it was funded by the Rothschilds, the so-called founding fathers, through Haym Salomon. They financed the so-called founding forefathers. You know, so from the beginning it was corrupt, but it had the appearance, you know, of being righteous. So then it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings. So what we're finding out is that this whole fairy tale that's taught about Satan being cast out of heaven, you know, Lucifer and that all that is a hoax. It's not real, because we're reading in the scriptures the understanding of this great dragon, which is called the devil and Satan, which is talking about people on the planet Earth, and specific. It's talking about the Edomites. Today they would be classified as so-called white people. Now, not all so-called white people are Edomites, just the ones whose seed line goes back to Esau. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And they started really to be cemented on the earth, right? Which is the EU. They started off as the ECC, the EEC, the European Economic Community. Later it was changed to the European Union, which now they have around 27 members. When they first started back in 1958, because they were in the talks March of 1957 of setting up this group. Then in January 1st of 1958, they got their charter. So from that point on, they started to pretty much rule. All right. So now we understand what the 7 heads and 10 horns is. So when we go back here to Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Now we know what this means. This is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. Now when we jump down to the 7th verse, just to show you, and there was war in heaven, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. So now we understand that this is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan, because Michael and Satan are in complete league. They're in complete agreement with each other, because the Most High, you know, set them up. So now somebody might say, well, wait a minute, why were they arguing about the body of Moses? Hey, you know, you could argue, but you could still be in the same mind, you know, in the same spirit, because they're both under the same authority of the Most High. So this war in heaven is talking about the final war, which the scriptures call Armageddon, which are the troops of Esau and the other nations gathered over there in what they call the Middle East, all in those areas and those regions, which you see all of the troops out there right now, you know, and they're constantly mounting up over there because the end is coming. Now, the reason why it speaks about in the heavens, the angels fighting against the dragon in the heavens, because they have the technology of the planes today. Stealth bombers, different types of bombers, planes. You have helicopters, you have drones, you know, and they're going to be up in the heavens fighting in this third world's war, when Yahushua and the angels pull up on them, when they crack the clouds, and then, you know, Yahushua is going to make light work of Esau. All right, you can read 2nd Ezra, the 13th chapter, and it breaks that down. And prevailed not, neither was their place found anymore in heaven, because you're not going to be able to take planes back up into the sky anymore. That's why it says their place was found no more in heaven. So you understand now why in the churches they think that this is talking about the spiritual demon Satan, because they can't discern that when it speaks about heaven, it's talking about the actual skies, not talking about the heavens where the Heavenly Father, you know, dwells in the spirit world, even though He's everywhere, you know. But it's not talking about the spirit world. It's not talking about the heavens of the heavens of the heavens of the heavens. Inside joke. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So now we know that the 7 heads and 10 horns, this great beast, the great red dragon, is talking about people, right? Edomites in specific, which are called the great dragon. They're called the old serpent. They're called the devil and Satan, which proves that old serpent in the Garden of Eden was an actual man. and not Satan himself. He had Satan on him, but he was an actual man, which deceived the whole world. And how did they deceive the whole world? Through the Renaissance. You know, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? That goes back to Job 9:24. So the earth has been given into the hands of Esau. Why? Because it's time for them to come into power. That happened during the time of the Renaissance period. And when they got back into power, the very first thing they did was deceive the world and conquered the world with their sword. So as they conquered, they are deceived with their form of Christianity, which the Elder Apostle calls Renaissance Christianity, Plantation Christianity, so on and so forth. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, right? Because the angels that is speaking about is talking about his technology, his protection. Because what are the angels there for? The angels are there for protection. Let's go to Psalms 34. And this may have to be in two parts. I'm not trying to rush it, however the Spirit allows. Psalms 34:7. The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him and delivereth them. So what is the purpose of the angels? They're for protection for the elect of the nation of Israel. So Esau's angels would be what? His weaponry, his stealth bombers, his drones, his missiles, his helicopters, tanks, so on and so forth. In specific, this right here in the heavens is talking about flying objects that they use for their protection. So when they're kicked out of heaven, they're not going back up there, because all of those planes and everything are going to be totally destroyed, annihilated. So now we understand that this is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. This is talking about people on the planet Earth, specifically the Edomite nation, and specifically the top ruling empires of Esau, beginning with the Greeks, all right, which are back today. The Greeks, the Romans, the Spanish, the French, Germanian Major, Germanian Minor, Britain, which is 7, and then America, which is the 8th. Okay, so now going back up here to Revelation 12:4 now, and it's tell Judah third. And you could also read to get a little more understanding on these 3 verses here and verse 3. You can go to Revelation the 19th chapter, and that goes into it also. When Yahushua is coming to make war in righteousness, he's going to be fighting against the beast and the dragon, so on and so forth. All right, it says in Revelation 12:4, it says, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. This is a representation of the Roman Empire, which at the time when Yahushua was on the scene, Herod was on the scene, and you had predominantly 3 tribes back there, the southern kingdom, which comprised of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Now you had a sprinkle of the other tribes there, the northern kingdom, that had gone back to the Romans, had gone back to the southern kingdom during the time of Jeroboam and Rehoboam. But for the most part, the major portion of people that were there in that land were the southern kingdom. All right, and these are the ones that got persecuted the most. This is why in prophecy, when it spoke about this great lamentation that was going to take place at this time, it mentioned about Rachel weeping. Matter of fact, let's get there. I believe that's Jeremiah 31. Let me just look for it this way. Right, there we go. Because I knew it wasn't spelled Rachel, Rahel, which is Rachel. Jeremiah 31:15. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Al-Shai, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel, weeping for her children, refused to be comforted for her children because they were not. Right. Now, Rachel was the mother of Joseph and the mother of Benjamin. So predominantly in Bethlehem, in that area, The majority of the babies that were slaughtered were Benjaminite babies, all right, of the southern kingdom, because remember, mostly the southern kingdom was there. Like I said, you had a sprinkle of the northern kingdom, but it was mostly the southern kingdom that was there. You had Anna, which was of the tribe of Asher, because you had Asher, you had Ephraim, you had Manasseh, and a couple others that had went back, but majority people or tribes that were in Israel at the time of the Lord was the southern kingdom, all right, which represents the third part of the stars of heaven, because remember, there's three tribes, all right, and did cast them to the earth, right, and they did, and eventually 70 AD they cast them to the earth, and prior to that they were putting hell on Jake, heavy taxation, even though they allowed Jake to rule among themselves, but they still were under heavy tribute. That's why the zealots kept revolting and kept fighting against the Romans, because they were tired of the taxation. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be devoured, which the dragon represents Esau, but in this case this particular dragon, which is a part of the dragon system, is Herod, all right, stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's why when the wise men came to him, when we go to Matthew, the 2nd chapter, right, it says, now when Yahushua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. See, when Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why? Because he was like, what king? I'm the king, So he was troubled by that. So eventually what he did was he said, and when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Yahushua should be born. And they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, which goes back to Micah, the 5th chapter, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. All right, the Israelites. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared, and he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search diligently for the young child, and when you have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. But he did that, being a demon, a devil, because he wanted to kill Yahushua. And then the angels came to the wise men in a dream and told them not to go back, to Herod, And then eventually the Lord came to a dream to Joseph and told him to take Mary and the child down to Egypt. And that also fulfilled, the Lord coming out of Egypt. Then it says here, Herod slaughters babies. Why? Because he, was waiting, and it had to be about 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years that he was waiting for the wise men to come back, and they never came back. So 16 verse, then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So there was about 2 years passed that the wise men didn't come back, because they were warned by the Lord not to go back to that devil. So he was so pissed off, he went down there and slaughtered all of the babies from 2 years old and under, meaning the male children, not the female, the male children. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not. So that fulfilled that prophecy. All right, and this right here in Revelation 12 and 4, connecting Herod with the dragon, proves that Herod proves that the Romans were also Edomites. That's why they lumped them up as being red. All right, because he was officiating the business of the Romans, because he himself was an Edomite and the Romans were Edomites. That's why certain so-called rabbis from there, or certain rabbis back then, Jake, identify Rome as Edomites. But the Greeks were also Edomites. You know, the French, you know, the Spanish, all of them were Edomites. You know, but now you had Jake that was among them. And this is the great, you know, mystery of the Gentiles or the Israelite foreigners, is that you have Israelites scattered everywhere. You had Jake that was ruling all throughout Europe. And then Esau came in there, you know, and took over. But Jake was still around, you know. So you still have Israelites around all throughout Europe that look like so-called white people or Edomites that are really Israelites. You see? So this is the thing that's a great mystery, and this is a major stumbling block to a lot of these individuals that call themselves, you know, being in the truth, call themselves Israelites, because if they see somebody that looks white, they automatically think, you know, they automatically judge that he is an Edomite, a so-called white person. And we do the same thing at first, you know, and then we kind of study the person or look at the person and their movements and the way they, you know, talk and the way, you know, they react. And you're like, I don't know, this guy might be an Israelite, you know. So it says, Revelation 12:5, and she, in this case, well, this is dealing with matter of fact, you know what? I wanted to go to another precept, but it kind of passed. So if it comes back up, we'll go to it. I mean, I know this where the precept is, but I was supposed to go here in the second verse, but there's no worries. Revelation 12:5, and she brought forth a man child. Now, the nation of Israel, you know, was waiting. Matter of fact, let me just get it. Was waiting for the consolation. Remember, Simeon, the old man, he was waiting for the consolation of Israel, and it was revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he should not see death until he saw the Lord's anointed being born. Isaiah 66:6. Ain't that something? 666. Because Israel was being delivered from the devil even back then. A voice of noise from the city, a voice from the temple, a voice of the Lord that rendereth recompense to his enemies. Before she travailed, meaning before Israel was catching hell underneath the Romans and was ready to be delivered, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child, right, which is Yahushai. Because Yahushai was preordained before the world began to be the deliverer of the nation of Israel. This is 1 Peter 1:18. For as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, but with the precious blood of Yahushua, as of a lamb without blemish and without spot, who verily was foreordained before the foundation of the world. See? But was manifest in these last times for you. So he was foreordained before the foundation of the world. So pretty much before the earth was even established, it was already set up that Yahushua was going to come down on the earth and be the deliverer. Ain't that something? So Isaiah 66:7, before she travailed, she brought forth, before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who have heard such a thing? Who have seen such a thing? Or such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day, or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children, because they were delivered by Yahushua. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, saith the Lord? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy power? So Yahushua was foreordained, and that's what she brought a man-child for, to be the savior of the nation of Israel, because Jake was catching hell then, and unbeknownst to the disciples of them back then, there was still going to be times when they had to be persecuted by Esau, all the way to this very day. who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up into the Most High and to his throne, right? Because Yahushua was eventually crucified and went back to the Father. Then, when he was on the scene, he mentioned to Jake back then that there was going to be a great persecution. And he gave him warnings of what to look for on this great persecution. That's why he said, when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. And when that happened, he told them, then, those that are in the field flee to the mountains, and those, so on and so forth. You could go to Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, and they break it down. And the woman fled into the wilderness. Now, the wilderness here is a representation of the interiors of Africa, but they went different places. But a good portion of them went into the interiors of Africa because you had different Israelite communities down in so-called Africa, and it was closer, and that's where Jake would flee most of the time for refuge. That's why the angel told Joseph to take Mary and his son and go down into Egypt. All right, because you had a lot of Israelites in Egypt called Alexandrian Jews. You had in northern Africa, you had Israelites, you had Jews up there, Cyrene, Libya, all those areas up there, you had Israelites. And then eventually they migrated into other parts of Africa, and a big bulk rested on the west coast of Africa, and they were there for 1,500 years until, certain Hamites and certain Jakes sold them to Esau, and they brought them, and Ishmael sold them to Esau, and they brought them over here to the Americas, right? Then in the wilderness, right, after a certain period of time, that's when Esau took a good bulk of them over here to this side of the world, where she has a place prepared of the Most High. And this place that is prepared of the Most High is dealing with America. Let's go to Joel chapter 3 and verse 5. Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things, the children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have you sold unto the Grecians. Now, this word here for Grecians goes back to Yawan, which is Japhet. But when Esau was in that land, because who were the Israelites sold to? They were sold to the so-called white man, which the so-called white man is not Japhet. They are Edomites, but they just assimilated or conquered the land of Greece, the land of Rome, and all those different lands, and put themselves in there instead of the actual dark skin or brown skin people of Japhet. Let me see, Apostle. Let me see something. Apostle, serious quick question. My generations are from Nigeria. Does that mean they escaped the slave ships to the west? I'm not sure I understand your question. What do you mean they escaped the slave ships to the west? Because Nigerians are Israelites. Matter of fact, we have a bunch of brothers in the GMS camps that are from Nigeria. So I'm not sure if you mean that your forefathers actually stayed there, or that they were brought over here in captivity. I'm not really sure. I follow along, but the Nigerians are Jakes. It says you have sold into the Grecians that you might, yes, forefathers. So what? I mean, what do you mean that that's where they come from, or they escaped the slave ships because they didn't come over to this side of the world in cargo slave ships? Because if that's the case, then you have not every Israelite went into captivity that way. Not every Jake that was in the interiors of Africa was brought over here by cargo slave ships. But as Elder Pastor pointed out a while back, that the ones that were brought here, pretty much had children. So those children that they had, and children, they could have been some of those ones over there in the interiors of Africa that died coming back in the reincarnation. So one way or the other, still, went into captivity, and not every Israelite suffered every single curse the way this, the curses came out, because you had some that were doing pretty good while others were catching hell. Because you had certain Israelites that were still in Africa that were doing better than the Israelites that were here in America in slavery. It says that you might remove them far from their border. All right, and that's what they did, because at least when Jake was in so-called Africa, they knew that their land was Israel. When they came over here, they beat the language out of them. They beat their names out of them. They taught them English, just like when they conquered Gad, so-called North American Indians, mainly, and they sent them to what? Boarding schools. They cut off their hair, which, Gad was going off having that long hair, but they cut off their hair. They took their ancient wardrobe away, gave them Esau's wardrobe. They couldn't speak their language. They had to speak English. They were trained, by Esau. And, so pretty much that's what these devils do. So it says, behold, so when they were brought in captivity, where did they go to? Where were they sold? Here in America. It says, behold, I, meaning the Most High, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, will raise them out of the place, see, whether you have sold them. So where was Israel sold? All the way over here in the Americas. So this is that place that was prepared for it, and will return your recompense upon your own head, because Esau is going to have to pay for that. So going back to Revelation 12 verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness of Africa, where she had the place prepared of the Most High, because eventually they would be sold from there and brought over here to the Americas, that they should feed her there 1,203 score years. Now 1,203 score years breaks down to 42 months, breaks down to 3.5 years, which these are prophetic years. Now it's no coincidence that if you take out a calculator right now, or you do the quick math, and you take the 1619 and you minus from, I think, you minus, no, take 1619 and you add 350 to it, it's going to come out to 1969. And there's no coincidence that in 1969, that's when the Elder Abba Bivens, the Spirit of the Lord, had him really pushing this word even harder and heavier at that time. It's no coincidence. And that's when what we teach today was established, One West, what they call One West. And that's not a coincidence. This is something that took place and that happened. So why is it that from that point, when the bulk of the slaves were brought here, unto this point, does it add up to 350 years? Because this is not talking about 3.5 years. It's prophetic. All right. And then after that, that's when the Elder Abba Bivens was teaching. Now, prior to him teaching, you had other Israelites that were waking up to know that they were Israelites, but they were in the Old Testament. They didn't accept the New Testament because they were following the way of the small hats. It wasn't until Elder Abba Bivens, the Spirit was on him to go into the New Testament. And this is what caused a friction between him and those other leaders, from what I understand, that he was going into the New Testament and they didn't. Okay? And we needed both, because both of them, go hand in hand. Matter of fact, let's go to Matthew 13 and 52. I was just reading this morning. 52. Then said he unto them, therefore every scribe which is instructed unto the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which bringeth forth out of his treasure things new and old. The Old Testament and the New Testament go hand in hand. And that's why, the Lord, because the spirit that was in Elder Abba Bivens was the spirit that was in John the Baptist, which was the spirit that was in Elijah and other great men from the past. And he's the one that brought us back to the Father Yahweh and his Son Yahweh Shai by going into the New Testament as he was inspired to do so by Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. So going back to Revelation 12 and 7, and there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, which we already broke these 3 verses down. You know, if you just tuning in, you could, go to the beginning of the video and you can get that breakdown. This is dealing with Esau being destroyed out of heaven, meaning out of rulership and out of those planes, helicopters, drones, or wherever they may be in the sky. All right. Revelation 12:10, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now has come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our power. Right. So once these devils are taken out of their rulership, that's when the kingdom of heaven will be established. That's when we can be free from this devil. That's why the scriptures speak about hastening the day. And we hasten the day. Matter of fact, Isaiah 51:14, the captive exile hasteneth that he may be loose. We are the captives, and we are in exile. We are removed from our land, and we're hastening, hoping the Lord hurries up that he may be loose, meaning that we be loose from this prison sentence, this devil that has us bound, and that he should not die in the pit. Yeah, because we are in the pit. Know that his bread should fail, right? All right, so that's what we're waiting for. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So back in Revelation 12 and 10, and the power of his anointed, right? Because once these devils go down, we could rejoice because, Yahweh Shai will be in rulership, Yahweh Bashem Shai will be in rulership, and we will be in rulership also. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our power day and night. And that's what they do. They accuse Jake day and night, but they also put Jake into categories. And you see these devils, they be putting these devils know more about the Israelites than some Israelites out there. Because they study, they ask questions, and these stupid dummies that go on their platforms are just spilling their guts, telling them everything, thinking that this guy is really a nice guy. He's just trying to get the understanding of what's going on. No, he's just extracting information from you, dummy. You see these guys spilling their gut. Yeah, this and that. You guys are dickheads. The whole time, this guy, Vocab and others, all they're doing is extracting information from you to try to make us look bad. It's not, okay, well, I'm just trying to understand you so that when I speak about y'all, I can, give the people more understanding of who y'all are and where y'all come from and what y'all do. No, it's about demonization. It says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, right, meaning the Israelites, and in this time the elect, and by the word of their testimony. See, these are the prophets. That's why once America is destroyed, it says, rejoice over her, thou, holy prophets and apostles. And they loved not their lives unto the death, right? Because there's going to come a time when these devils are going to come down having great wrath, as it's going to say. And in this time, they're going to be like madmen sparing none. There's going to be a great persecution. That's why all of this legislation is being put online, on the records. That's their draconian legislation. That's why the scriptures speak about they spoke as a dragon. And what is a speech? The speech is the legislation that they're passing, that once it's passed, they can use it to their advantage. That's why the small hats created the civil rights movement, funded it, Matter of fact, they funded it, and they, had Jake to be the face in the forefront. Meanwhile, they're sitting there having Jake catch all the hell for it so that they could eventually use it for themselves. This is from, let me see something. You see .org. Just bear with me 1 second. Now, because I know, I wasn't bugging, but I couldn't find the info yesterday. But here we go. This is from rac.org, a brief history of small hats and the civil rights movement of the 1960s. And you can see here, you got these three symbols here, and you have I'm not sure if this is a Jake or Edomite, and then you have who? The small hats there, because they're the ones that set this whole thing up and funded it. You can see here the practice of the small hats teaches respect for the fundamental rights. So we're going to skip through all of that. American small hats played a significant role in the founding and funding of some of the most important civil rights organizations, including the NAACP, the Leadership Conference of Civil and Human Rights, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. In 1909, Henry Moskowitz joined W.E.B. Du Bois and other civil rights leaders to found the NAACP. Yeah, because they founded it. They funded it, and set up Jake as the face of it. Crivey Kaplan, a vice chairman of the Union of American Hebrew Congregation, now the Union for Reform Judaism, served as a national president of the NAACP from 1966 to 1975. Arnie Aronson worked with A. Philip Randolph and Roy Wilkins to found the Leadership Conference. And it goes on and on and on. Matter of fact, I put this in the chat in case anybody wants to read it. And that's that. Now, going back. Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. Right. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So they're going to pick up the pace, because they see their time is running out. And this is where it's going to be a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. All right. So this is the time we're in right now. Now, because this kind of jumps back a little bit back. Well, not a little bit. It jumps back a lot. So Revelation 12:13, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Now, this is going back to, when Herod did his thing, and this is how he knew that these devils knew that they were going down, because Herod, when the wise men came to him and told him that the king was born being born in Israel, because they saw the star, he got nervous. He knew that he was about to go down along with the Romans. But what they didn't understand back then, that it wasn't going to happen till this time now. Now, there was going to be an interruption in their rulership, but they would come back into power later on in the future. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle. The woman is Israel. The 2 wings of a great eagle is a great deliverance. And that's why Yahweh told them, when you see Jerusalem compassed about with armies, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. And the ones that understood that 30 plus years later into the future, when they saw that, they were older, their children were older, and some of them fled prior to the Romans besieging Jerusalem completely, closing it off. And they got the hell out of Dodge and were delivered from that onslaught. They were delivered from cannibalism. They were delivered from, the great siege in Jerusalem, the great suffering. It says that she might fly into the wilderness, so-called Africa, into her place, because eventually they were brought to America, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time, which is the same thing we read up above, from the face of the serpent, right? And they did feed Jake during slavery. Even though it was crap, they room and board, and the food, everything was crappy, but they did feed him. And then even after that, years ago, Apostle Tar used to go into this a lot. You had a lot of different. See, now you don't have shit. Back in the days, like the 60s, 70s, and certain up into the 80s, I believe, they had a lot of different programs where they were helping Jake out. I believe there was something called CEDA and different other, things that, you could work. They would find you work. You had what's those things called? You would get a trade. They were helping Jake, become plumbers, electricians, um, um, mechanics, so on and so forth. But eventually, all that shit, they took all that shit out. It says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman. What is this water of a flood after the woman? These is talking about the armies of the Romans. Let's go to Luke chapter, I believe that's chapter 19. And I'll start at 41. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. Why did he weep over the city? Why did Yahushua weep over the city? Because he saw in the future the great slaughter of Jake by the Romans. Men, women, children. He saw the great slaughter that was going to happen to them. That's why he wept. Saying, if thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hidden, they are hid from thine eyes. Because Jake was blinded. That's why the ones that didn't take heed, years later, when they saw the things that Yahushua spoke about, they got caught up in that siege. For the day shall come upon thee that thine enemies shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee round and keep thee in on every side, see? And shall lay thee even with the ground and thy children within thee, and they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. And there was a lot, that was a hell of a time. Luke 21 and 20. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written might be fulfilled, as far as that prophecy was concerned. When you go back to the book of Daniel 9. All right. So going back, Revelation 12:15, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman. That's dealing with the Roman military. That he might cause it to be carried away of the flood, right, by that army, that great army, which a lot of them met their fate at that. Because Titus, General Titus, which was a non-experienced clown, the one that really led the charge was a so-called black man, by the name of Tiberius Julius Alexander. He was an Israelite that knew he was an Israelite, but despised his Israeliteship. And pretty much he's the one that led the campaign and the destruction of Jerusalem, which the credit was given to that devil Titus. That's why you have the Ark of Titus, which we had at the beginning of this. But it was Tiberius Julius Alexander that led the fight, because Titus was a very inexperienced military man. He was a very inexperienced general. But Tiberius Julius Alexander, who was the Jake, he had a lot of campaigns where he put down a lot of rebellions of Jake among the Alexandrian Jews and others in different areas. So he was very experienced dealing with Jake. And he was a Jake himself. All right. It says, and the earth helped the woman. And the reason why the earth helped the woman was because they were able to flee out of Jerusalem. The ones that, that Saul was coming into the interiors of Africa, up into Europe, over there in among the East Indians, because you had Jake communities everywhere. Because years ago, this was taught that this was talking about the archaeology. And still, brothers still break it down like that. Certain individuals. I don't believe anybody in GMS still breaks it down like that. But you still have individuals out there, I'm sure, that break it down like that. And that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about Jake being able to escape and flee to other parts of the world, outside of being in Jerusalem during this time. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, right? Because as soon as they took off, they weren't able to get all of the Israelites, which the dragon cast out of his mouth, right? Which was dealing with the Roman military. And the dragon was wroth with the woman and went to make war with the remnant of her seed. And that's exactly what they did. Because they were tired of the revolts. This is why Claudius, I believe it was Claudius, kicked all of the Jews out of Rome. Because it was stirring up a ruckus. So these devils finally got tired of Jake, and then they really put the screws into him. That's why Yahushua said, you see all these buildings? There shall not be one stone left upon another that shall not be cast down. Which keep the commandments of the Most High and have the testimony of Yahushua. Right. So there was a great slaughter and a great onslaught upon the Israelites back then. You know, certain ones of them escaped, but a lot of them got put to death. And, you know, in your leisure, you could type in, you could type in 70 AD, right? You could type in 70 AD, and you could read about the history of when the Romans took over and besieged Jerusalem. It started roughly around 66 AD, and it ended, the major siege ended in 70 AD, but it went all the way up to about 73 AD. You know, some say 73, some say 74, but from the time of somewhere mid 66 to, I believe, mid 73 or around that, so far, it was 7-year period, which was true to the prophecy. You know, so you could watch videos on it, you could read up about it, you could read up on it, you know, and there's a lot of history and information on 70 AD. You're gonna get all kind of information, and it's gonna break down what happened at that in that time. And even Josephus gave testimony of what took place at that time. So with that, you know, this has been Revelation chapter 12, BTTB, back to the breakdowns. And with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say, Shalom.